Welcome to this week's Halacha Shir. The Shir is entitled Stranded at Sea, Do I Make a Bracha on Lobster? A very interesting Shir, and it's connected, as we always try, to this week's, the coming week's Sedra, this week's Parshas Vayeshev, and we have the whole story with the sale of Yosef, and we'll see how it's connected, this topic is connected to the Parsha. Take a look. If you're listening online, please, at the handout, you can email me at j.golker@gmail.com and I'll send you the handout. The first makar, the first source on the handout, paragraph 1, is a medrash. It's found in Pesikta Rabati, it's actually in Parshas Kisisa, and it says as follows: when Yosef was sent by his father, Leilech etzel Ochiv, to go and visit his brothers, Kiven Shera'a Oison, when they saw him, Chashvu Olav Lahargoi. The Shvatim, the brothers of Yosef, wanted to kill him. Shenema vayimru ish el Ochiv, va'atzol lechu v'nahargehu. V'heim oimdim u'mashlichim oisoi lebar. They stood, and then they took him and threw him into the pit. V'oimrim noichal v'nishte v'ach kachon moishchim oisoi u'malim v'hargim oisoi. Let us first eat, we'll eat and drink, and then we'll remove him out of the pit, and we will then kill him. Ochlu v'shasu, they ate and they drank, bo levarech, and then they were about to bench. Amalahem Yehuda, and Yehuda said, boim laharoig, you're about to commit murder. Umavarchim laKodesh Baruch Hu, but first you're benching, you're blessing HaKodesh Baruch Hu. Ein onu elemenatzim, we are blasphemers. Ma bet sakinharog is achenu, what benefit do we get from killing our brother? Amalahem Yehuda, Boitzeach Beirach Mietz Hashem. Now this is a pasuk in Tehillim. The full pasuk says, Ki Hillel Rosh al Tavas Nafshay, the wicked man boasts about the desires of his soul, or Boitzeach Beirach Mietz Hashem, and the robber congratulates himself for having blasphemed Hashem. And therefore, the Medrash is attributing this pasuk to Yehuda, that Yehuda said that if we go ahead and bench Sebrach Samozon before we go and kill him, then we are no better than Botzea Birach Nietz Hashem, with the robber congratulating himself for having blasphemed Hashem. It's blasphemy, we're blessing Hashem and about to do a terrible act. Rather, let us instead sell him to the Ishmaelim and not kill him. Okay, that is the Medrash brought in the Pesikta Rabati. Now, therefore, it's a good segue to talk about this topic, and we'll see this concept of Botzea Berech Nietz Hashem is going to feature very much in this topic. Stranded at sea, do I make a bracha on lobster? Now, it's a fascinating topic, and has actually different areas and avenues to go down, but one is quite simply the case at hand. Stranded at sea, Rahman al-Islan, a person is lost on a desert island, and there's nothing to eat other than shellfish. Is he allowed to eat? Well, if it's pikuach nefesh and there's nothing else to eat, then absolutely. The question is, do you make a bracha? Strange scenario. You're fishing and you catch the crab and the lobster and the eels. Do you make a bracha on it? And of course, related to all of that is, what about a situation where you haven't got kosher food to eat? Rahman al-Islam, in a hostage situation or in a concentration camp where they're serving tray food. You have to eat because it's pikuach nefesh, but you make a bracha on tray food. How does that work? And then also related is situations of medicine. You're forced to eat it, as it were, because of your situation. You're ill. You need to take this particular medicine. Do you make brachas on medicine generally? So all of this is somehow related. Let's take a look. The starting point is a Mishnah in brachas. It appears in the Gemara Daf Mem Hey Amud Aleph, and it's on source number 2. It says the Mishnah in brachas: Shleisha she'achlu. If 3 people eat ka'achas together, chayovin lezamin. They got to do a zimun. Ochel demai u'maiserishin shenot l'trumoso u'maisesheni v'hegdish sheniftu v'hasham she'ochel gazayis mizamin lov. If they eat food which they're allowed to eat, then you make a zimun. Each one, of course, has a chiddush. Why after that? Okay. Ochel tevel. If, however, he eats tevel, which is produce where trumas and maisrus have not been taken, or maiser rishon shelonot trumosai, or you've got maiser rishon that was separated to give to the Levi, but the owner had not yet been mafresh the truma to give to the kohen, or maiser sheni vehegdish lo niftu, you can't eat it unless you've been poider it to redeem it. V'hashamash she'ochel pachas megazayis, or the shamash who eats less than a kazayis, v'hanochri ein mezamnin olav, then that you can't involve them in a zimun. So if you're eating food which is tevel, for example, which you can't eat, or if the shamash ate less than the kazayas, or things like that, then that does not warrant a zimun. Now, the Rambam, based on this, in Hilchas Brachas Parak Aleph Halach Yoteh, says the following: Anybody who eats something which is prohibited, whether it's on purpose or by mistake, he does not make a bracha olav, not a bracha rishona, nor a bracha achrona. Ketzad. How so? A person ate tevel, even drabonon dika tevel. All of these situations, kilchason hasn't been separated or haven't been redeemed properly. You don't make a bracha, and certainly if a person ate nevelis and trefos which are also in Torah, then certainly he doesn't make a bracha before or afterwards. That is the Rambam's codification of the halacha based on this Mishnah. Says the Ravid there in Hilchas Brachas in Perek Aleph Halacha Yotes, Ta'a b'zeh ta'os gedola. The Ravid does not hold back his words. Says the Ravid that the Rambam has made a serious error here. Sheloi omru she'ein mevarchin, because the Mishnah doesn't say anything about brachas, ela she'ein mezamnin aleihem. All the Mishnah says is that you don't do zimun. Loima she'ein lohem chashivas kviyas, because this eating hasn't got the requisite kviyus. The eating together is considered a temporary, transient type of eating. However, because after all, they're eating things which are not allowed to be eaten. If three people sat down and one had an apple, one had a bag of crisps, and one had a drink, that's not going to make a zimun together, then because it's not considered keva. Says the Rabbi, she'ein keva lezimun. Ela bracha tchila v'soif lama lo yivarchu. But a bracha, the beginning, a bracha in the end. Why wouldn't a person make a bracha? Hayil v'nenu, because after all, he's got benefit. He's got some enjoyment and benefit out of that eating. So says the Ravid, I don't understand the Rambam. Why does the Rambam say you don't make a bracha on things which are prohibited to eat, either midrabon and certainly midoraisa, a bracha rishona and a bracha achrona? I say you do, says the Ravid. And the Mishnah is only talking about zimun because it's no zimun over there, because that eating, ein lo keva, has no established, fixed type of choshev eating. Okay, so very important machlokes Rambam Ravid, whether or not you make a bracha on things which are prohibited to eat. The Rambam says you do not make a bracha. If it's prohibited either deraisa or even derabanan, you do not make a bracha rishona or a bracha achrona on that. And the Ravid says, no, you get hana, you're benefiting from it, so you therefore have to make a bracha. Bracha rishona, bracha achrona. However, there's no zimun because that ein lo keva, it's not considered substantial enough to necessitate a zimun. Now the Shulchan Aruch, unsurprisingly, follows the Rambam, and therefore in Archaim Siman Kuf Tzadivov Sif Aleph in the paragraph 4, the Mechaber says, "Achol davar is, if a person ate something which is prohibited, afal pisha ein asa midrabanan, even though it's only asa to eat midrabanan, ein mezamnin olav ve'ein mevarchin olav, both." No zimun and no bracha, lo b'tchila v'lo b'soif, not a bracha rishona, not a bracha achrona. Now, very interesting points that the Mishnah Berurah makes on this Rambam, on this Shulchan Aruch. Says the Mishnah Berurah, says the Chavetz Chaim, ein mevarchin olav. Number one, v'hu adin she'ein oinen omein brachas. So not only do you not make a bracha on it, if you hear somebody make a bracha on food which is also for him to eat, you don't say omein to that bracha. Now you can have that scenario. You can have a situation where you have a wayward teenager who is taking, is taking some food which is treif and he can't control himself, and he takes the food and he looks around and he sees he's got a frum friend and he wants to impress his friend and he makes a bracha on something which is treif. So, according to the Rambam and according to the Shulchan Aruch, he shouldn't be making a bracha. And if you hear that bracha, you shouldn't answer amen to that bracha. Lo b'tchila, says the Mishnah Berurah in Sifkat and Gimel, Hayil v'dava isuhu, since at the end of the day this item is prohibited, v'yesh aveira b'achilosoi, and there is an aveira in his eating it, menayet es Hashem. This is our situation. Menayet es Hashem, he is blaspheming against Hashem. This is the pasuk in Tehillim which the Medrash quoted and attributed to Yehuda in reference to the Birchas Hamazon that was going to take place before they were about to kill Yosef, and then Yehuda persuaded them in the end to sell him. Okay. V'lo b'soif, nor do you make a bracha at the end. And even, says the Mishnah Berurah, if a person ate to satiation, however, if he ate b'shegeg, for example, you're sitting down, you had a bowl of food, a plate of food, and then you found out that this food was treif, it's also even also midrabanan, v'nizka achachilosay, das hataz v'oid kama achronim de bezeh yuchel levarich b'soif de bezeh lo shayach niutz. In a situation where you didn't know it was a shegeg, it was a genuine mistake, and you found out afterwards that it was treif, then the taz and other achronim say that you should make a bracha achrona. Now, what about if you steal? Because the pasuk is talking about the robber congratulates himself having blasphemed. What about theft? If a person steals items and then eats them, do you make a bracha on that? Im gonav egazel chitin. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. This is the bottom paragraph of the handout on the first page. Im gonav egazel chitin. If a person stole chitin v'tochnan, so he stole wheat and he ground the wheat into flour often, and then he baked a cake or some bread. Yesh omrim she'af al pi shekonoi b'shinui. Halachically, you have been koiner it b'shinu ma'isa because you've actually transformed this wheat into something totally different. V'hariheim sheloi, and therefore they become mine. Ela shechayev d'shalem lo yidomim avuram. But it's just that I've got to pay back the person I stole from the cost of the wheat. Mikol mokum osa levarich al zeh. However, it's also to make a bracha on it. Bein bracha rishon, bein bracha samazon. In bracha de'is behaskaras Hashem. Tomitu b'chal niyas. Any time when you're making reference to Hashem's name, it's considered Beitzeh Berech Nietz Hashem, and therefore, even though technically it's yours, and you've got to just pay back the guy for the wheat that you stole, still, the first opinion is brought here in the Mishnah Berurah is that you do not make a bracha rishona, nor a bracha achrona on stolen goods. V'yesh omrim, do yochel levarich, and there are those who say you do. V'hamogen Avram, didn't Berach Samazon, imoch katesivir yesh lo espezeshi, yivarich Berach Samazon, hu derais v'yesh lahachme levarich. And the Magen Avram says, if a person ate and you ate to satiation, and therefore you need to make Birchas Hamazon minator, you have a chiyuv. You baked this bread and you ate the bread and you had enough to be full and satisfied, then you have a chiyuv minator of Birchas Hamazon, and in that situation yesh lahachme ulevarich, says the Magen Avram. So to summarize the situation so far, that if a person, we've got a machlekes Rambam and Raavad, that if a person ate something which was not kosher, which was treif, even if it's only treif midrabanan, then the halacha is the Rambam says that you do not make a bracha rishona or achrona, and that is what the Shulchan Aruch paskins. The Raavad, of course, argues and says that you do make a bracha, but you just don't make a zimun. The Mishnah Berurah, commenting on the Shulchan Aruch, who says that you do not make a bracha, adds a few very interesting points. Number one, that if you hear a person make the bracha, you don't even say amen. And that if you ate b'sheigeg, you ate by mistake, you would make a bracha because that's not considered blaspheming. It's not you're not congratulating yourself and having said something which is totally inappropriate. You ate it by mistake. It's not considered blaspheming. And then if a person stole, even if he actually technically owns the item now, this is my loaf of bread because I ground it into flour and I made it into a cake. Nevertheless, and I only have to pay back the money for the wheat that I stole. Nevertheless, two opinions in the Mishnah Berurah. Number one, I don't make a bracha. Number two, I do make a bracha. And the Magen Avram says that if a person ate and there's a shaila of a deraisa because he's got to make brachas hamazon, then he should do that. Now, there seems to be a stira in the Machaba. If you turn to the top of the next page, talking about dangerous situations and eating treif for medical reasons, there seems to be a stira in the Shulchan Aruch. We'll see. The Mechaba says in Reish Dalet Sifches, any food or drink which a person eats for medical reasons, if he enjoyed them, they were pleasant tasting, then mevorich aleihem tchila v'soif. Then you make a bracha at the beginning and the end. So for example, you can take medication, you can take liquid syrups and things like that. Sometimes they're just plain tasting and have no taste, or sometimes they have a terrible taste. Then clearly you don't make a bracha on that. But if they have a pleasant taste, you get sometimes for kids, you get, or even for adults, you get strawberry flavor or whatever flavor syrup, medicine. Then if it's pleasant tasting, and the palate enjoys it, then you do make a bracha. And so too, if you have a sore throat and you want to take a throat sweet, even though you're doing it for medical reasons, if it's just, you've got a headache and you take a Nurofen or a Panadol, then you don't make a bracha. You can make the hirotzim, you don't make a bracha. However, if it's got a pleasant taste, for example, it's a blackcurrant flavored lozenge or throat sweet, then you would make a bracha. Okay. Then, says the Ramah, if you were forced to eat or drink, even though when you are forced to eat something and it might be tasty food and the throat and the palate enjoys it, Einay mevarich olav. Says the Rama, you do not make a bracha. Hayel v'nenes al kach, because you were forced to eat. So, Rahman al-Islam a million times, we should have only Basuras Tavis, but if a person was kidnapped or in a hostage situation, if you are forced to eat, you're trying not to eat, or in a situation, whatever it may be, where they literally put it down your throat, then in a situation like that, says the Shulchan Aruch, you don't make a bracha, Eino Mevarich Olav, because you were forced to eat. But yet, in Sif Tes, the next Sif, in Reish Dalet Sif Tes, the Shulchan Aruch says, if you eat food or drink shel issa because of the danger, i.e. you don't eat, you're going to starve, you're going to die, then you make a bracha at the beginning and the end. So back to our stranded at sea situation, you're stranded out there, there's nothing to eat, you end up on a desert island, and there's no vegetation, and there's nothing to eat. The coconuts are 100 meters in the air, and you try climbing the tree, and there's nothing, you can't get more than 10 meters high. And there's nothing to eat, and you look around, and then you go fishing, and you come up with some shrimps, or some crabs, or lobster, and you're sitting there, and you rub two stones together, and you cook them. You've got to eat because it's pikuach nefesh. Do I make a bracha or not? Says the Shulchan Aruch in Reish Dalet Sif Tes that you do. Ochel meichel mashke shel isim mipnei sakana, because it's life-threatening, and if you don't eat, you're going to die. Mevarich olav tchila v'seif. You make a bracha rishona and a bracha achrona. So how does that fit in with the Ramah who says that if you're forced to eat, that you don't make a bracha? Surely in a situation when you're stranded at sea or on a desert island or whatever it is, you're also forced by the situation. So how come over there you do make a bracha, and yet in a situation where someone puts the food down your mouth and forces you to eat, you don't make a bracha? Why the difference? So the Mishnah Berurah explains as follows. If you look at the third box on the second side, it's not comparable. Sif ches, when you're forced to eat, it's not comparable to the next sif. In the case of the lobster, where I'm choosing to eat because I've got to save my life, I'm enjoying the food that I'm eating, I'm getting benefit, it's keeping me alive, it's nourishing me. True, it's a forced situation, but shani hosam da'onis ein al achila gufa. The onus, the duress over there is not on the eating per se, it's on the situation. But in the situation in Sifches where you're forced to eat, the terrorist is forcing you to eat, the actual eating is forced, they're forcing you to eat, it's not shaykh to make a bracha on that, it's because they're forcing you to do it. Kaini svaras harma v'eskimim harba achronim, and that is the svar of the Ramah and many achronim. However, he does say v'yesh cholkim, says Mishnah Berurah zeh usvir lehu dekim the shesoif soif nenegroni. Even in a situation where literally they're forcing you to eat, they're putting it down your throat, still chashiva achila is considered eating. V'tzrich levarich al zeh chahid desif tes, and you would also have to make a bracha. What do you do? Says the Mishnah Berurah v'ayin b'chay adam shechriya de. In a situation where they're forcing you to eat bread, and therefore there's a chiyuv min haTorah to bench, then in that situation yivarech. So, what have we said? There seems to be a stira in the Mechaba. On one hand, in Reish Dalet Sif Ches, the Ramah says that if a person is forced to eat, you do not make a bracha. Yet, in a situation where you're stranded at sea, and all there is to eat, to keep body and soul together, is treif, is lobster, whatever it is, then you do make a bracha rishona, bracha achrona. How do you reconcile that? So the Mishnah Berurah says that as follows: the difference is the eating an onus or is the situation an onus? If the eating is an onus, you're forced to eat, they're putting it down your throat, then you don't make a bracha. If the situation is an onus, is beyond your control, you've got to eat. So when I'm eating, I'm actually doing it willingly, and therefore you have to make a bracha in that situation. However, so Rahman is done a million times in a situation where a person is kidnapped. Do you make a bracha or not? So this is this machlekes that according to the first opinion to the Ramah, if you're choosing to eat, you're in the cell and they're giving you food to eat, then you would make a bracha. According to this, then you would make a bracha. According to the second opinion in the Mishnah Berurah, the yesh cholkim, then if they're forcing you, if they're literally putting it down your throat because you were refusing to eat, then according to the Ramah you would not make a bracha. However, the Mishnah Berurah brings the yesh cholkim that says you do, and therefore if it's a situation where you ate kadei sevia the Bracha Hamazon Shlo min haTorah yivarich, then you would make a bracha. I've just finished reading the book by Rabbi, one of the hostages. Baruch Hashem, he came home and he had a incredibly difficult year and a half, or however long it wasn't the full 2 years, but it was a very, very long period of time. He describes his situation there in the tunnels. Baruch should save us all from all of these situations. But he describes that he got we saw pictures of him during the time he was in captivity, and he was like a skeleton. And he was given very small rations, I think 1 pita bread in the morning and 1 pita bread in the evening. So in that situation, he describes, he was with Ori Danino, Hashem Yimkim Domov, who they benched together. They were four, most of the time there were 4 of them, sometimes 6 or 8 together, and they would bench together. And Ori Danino was from a Frum family. I've met his father, and he would bench, say Birchas Hamazon for all the people there. And in that situation, according to the Ramah, if you're willingly eating, then of course you make a bracha. If, however, and he would make a bracha on his pita and he would make Birchas Hamazon. If you're resisting the eating and they're forcing it down your throat, according to the Ramah, then you wouldn't make a bracha. However, the Yesh Cholkim, there are those who argue, and the Chai Adam says, he makes the following pshara. The pshara is that when it comes to eating minat Torah, where there's a chiyuv d'oraisa to bench, because you ate k'dei severe to satiation, then in that situation you vorich. Okay, we'll leave it there.